Have you ever sat in a room full of laughter and still felt invisible? They still talk to you, they still smile, they still respond with polite words, but something in their eyes, their gestures, the space between you and them feels cold, distant, wrong. You can't quite name it. It's not open hostility, it's not obvious dislike, but it keeps happening, quietly, subtly, like a paper cut that somehow goes deeper each time. And then you wonder, am I just being sensitive? Am I overthinking this? You're not, and you're not alone. There is a kind of rejection that needs no words, no arguments, no accusations, but it's there, in the glance that skips past you, in the promises never kept, in the group photos you weren't invited to join. The most dangerous part of this silent exclusion is that it isn't loud. And because it isn't loud, it teaches you to stay silent too. But your silence doesn't have to be surrender. It can be awareness. It can be the strength to step back, not in anger, but in clarity. That's the Stoic way. Because the Stoic does not beg for affection. He seeks the truth, even when that truth is difficult to accept. In today's journey, I won't simply list 8 signs that someone secretly hates you. No, together, we'll uncover 8 levels of silent rejection, each one revealing a deeper form of distance, a hidden message beneath a surface politeness. Some of these signs are barely noticeable, like the way their body turns slightly away when you speak. Others are more painful, like realizing they only reach out when they need something. You don't need to confront, you don't need to accuse. A Stoic doesn't demand proof to live in truth. You just need to see clearly, detach gently, and let go with strength. And if you've ever felt this strange absence in someone's presence, or if you simply want to move through life with clarity and self-respect, then stay with me. This isn't just a video, it's a reminder. You deserve to be where you're welcomed, not where you're merely tolerated. You're watching True Stoic Way, a space for calm minds in a noisy world, a space where clarity is strength and stillness is power. If this reflection speaks to something within you, consider subscribing to the channel. Not for me, but so you never forget. There's always a place where your presence is valued and your peace comes first. Now let's begin with level 1, where the body speaks what the mouth refuses to say. Level 1, the body turns before the words do. Sometimes the first sign that someone has stepped away from you is that they never really stepped toward you at all. They still talk, they still respond, maybe they even smile, but their body tells a different story, one that doesn't use words, yet somehow speaks louder than anything they have ever said. The Stoics believed in reading not just the world, but the soul, and the soul, no matter how trained the mouth becomes, can't help but leave fingerprints on the body. A person may master tone, politeness, even eye contact for brief moments, but the way they exist near you, that's much harder to fake. Pay attention, because long before someone admits they no longer value you, their body will quietly start to create space. Not obvious space, not dramatic, just small retreats. They angle slightly away in conversation. Their feet point toward the exit, their arms cross like a gate. It might seem meaningless, it might feel like nothing. But repeated over time, these subtle shifts become architecture. A wall, one built without bricks or sound. I remember a time when I worked alongside someone for nearly 2 years. He was always polite, always professional. We never argued, but every meeting, every conversation, every coffee break, he would remain behind his desk, arms folded, back straight, distance in down. He never leaned in, never gestured toward inclusion, never once stood without something, anything between us. At first, I thought he was just reserved, but then I watched him interact with others. Warm, expressive, welcoming. With me, he was formal, cold, like every interaction was just a task to be completed. The body doesn't lie. It may whisper, but it always tells the truth. And you've probably felt this too. That moment when someone picks up their bag and holds it between you during a conversation, like a shield. Or when they scroll through their phone, not because they're distracted, but because it helps keep a barrier between you and them. You sense it when they sit at the edge of the seat, not to leave quickly, but to never settle fully into the moment with you. And here's the part that hurts the most. They might never say anything unkind, which makes you question your own instincts. Maybe I'm imagining things. But the truth is, your intuition often knows what the mind refuses to admit. You are being slowly, silently distanced. Now let me be clear. Not all quiet people are cold. Not all introverts are retreating from you. Some people simply need more space, more silence, more time. That's not rejection. That's temperament. But when someone's body is closed only around you, when they're warm and physically open with others, yet closed off in your presence, that is not personality. That is selective rejection. And the Stoic doesn't resent that. He notices. Because you don't need to chase validation from bodies that twist away. You simply need to see clearly and then move accordingly. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone can show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change." The same applies to presence. If someone shows you time and time again that they do not want to open themselves to you, not in posture, not in warmth, not in ease, then it is not your job to decode or fix them. It is your moment to withdraw, not in bitterness, but in clarity. We live in a world obsessed with directness. Say it, post it, confront it. But Stoicism invites a different kind of strength. One that doesn't demand confession to know what's true. The way someone places their body in relation to yours can be more revealing than any conversation. Because if someone values your presence, they don't fold in, pull away, or tense up. They relax, they lean in, they make space, not distance. You've seen this difference. We all have. So what do you do when you recognize this first level of rejection? You don't ask them to change. You don't twist yourself into a version they'll warm up to. You simply acknowledge the truth. Their posture is already shouting, "You are not welcome here." And instead of forcing closeness, you return to your own center. You remember that respect is not something you earn by shrinking. You walk where warmth meets you without being begged for. And you leave behind the places that feel like emotional waiting rooms, full of politeness, but empty of presence. This is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about becoming attuned. The Stoic sees the world clearly, without needing proof shouted in his face. He listens with his eyes, and when the body speaks, he doesn't ignore it. He doesn't explain it away. He adjusts. That is level 1. And if the body has already turned away, what comes next? A smile. That doesn't reach the eyes. Let's step into that next level and see what's waiting behind the mask. Level 2, when the smile doesn't reach the eyes. Sometimes silence doesn't show itself through absence. It hides in gestures that are present but hollow. The most unsettling form of distance isn't someone walking away. It's someone staying close but no longer meaning it. And nowhere is that more visible than in the smile. We live in a culture where smiles are currency. We exchange them daily, at work, in shops, among acquaintances, often without thinking. And most people have mastered the performance. Lips turned upward, voice softened, eyes blank. The Stoics taught us not to accept the surface at face value. They urged us to look beneath the polished mask of social ritual, because sometimes what looks like friendliness is just a disguise for detachment. Have you ever received a smile that felt more like a formality than a feeling? They grin, maybe even congratulate you, but the energy doesn't land. The warmth doesn't register. And the moment passes as if nothing happened. A real smile, one born from sincerity, reaches the entire face. It activates the eyes. It draws the cheeks upward. It reflects something felt inside, not just something acted outside. But the false smile? It's just lips. The eyes stay still. The soul stays silent. You may have seen this in moments where you expected joy to be shared. You tell someone good news, a promotion, a creative win, a long-awaited breakthrough. They smile, but it's thin, controlled, quick, and somehow you leave the conversation feeling less, like your moment of pride shrank in their presence. This is what happens when a smile is used as a placeholder. It fills space, but not with presence. I remember sharing a personal milestone with someone I'd once trusted. I expected, no, hoped for excitement, or at least genuine acknowledgement. What I got was a polite nod, a curve of the mouth, and eyes that looked past me, already somewhere else. Later, another friend pulled me aside and said quietly, "He didn't seem happy for you." And just like that, it clicked. That smile wasn't celebration, it was tolerance. The hard truth is, not every smile is goodwill. Some are shields, meant to keep the peace. Some are masks, meant to conceal envy or indifference. Some are strategies, meant to maintain image while withholding sincerity. And the Stoic does not rage against this. He doesn't accuse or demand authenticity. He simply learns to see it and to act accordingly. It's tempting to tell yourself they were just distracted, that maybe they were tired, preoccupied, or had something on their mind. And sometimes that's true. Which is why Stoicism doesn't teach you to judge too quickly, but it does teach you to observe the pattern, because one shallow smile can be forgiven, but a pattern of empty gestures tells a deeper story. If their eyes light up around others, if their energy lifts with someone else's success but dims with yours, that's not an accident. That's a message. Still, we must be careful. Not all quietness is rejection. Not all restraint is malice. Some people are cautious with praise, not because they don't care, but because they've been taught to be measured. But the difference lies in intention. A sincere person might be quiet, but they're present. Their stillness feels grounded, not cold. Their eyes, though soft, still see you. But someone who secretly resents you will keep smiling to protect their image, not your connection. And when someone's smile is a shield, not a bridge, you'll feel it. It won't make you feel seen. It will make you feel reduced. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But in this case, the reality is the suffering, because the contradiction is real. The smile says yes. The energy says no. And that dissonance is a form of quiet cruelty, not loud enough to call out, but strong enough to make you second guess your own worth. So what do? You don't return the fake smile. You don't perform matching politeness. You don't chase sincerity from someone who has none to give. Instead, you root deeper into your own presence. You smile when you mean it. You offer warmth when it's real. You express joy without needing it to be reflected. Because someone else's hollow expression does not diminish your truth. The Stoic path is not about closing yourself off to others. It's about learning where to be open. It's about recognizing that not everyone who claps for you is clapping out of joy. Some just want to appear kind while quietly hoping you stay small. And once you see that, you don't grow bitter. You grow wise. You don't chase applause. You build peace. A smile without warmth is not harmless. It's a mirror that reflects nothing. And standing in front of it for too long will only distort how you see yourself. So next time someone grins and it feels off, don't rush to explain it away. Don't plead for reassurance. Don't wait for them to show something real, because they already have. Their absence was dressed in civility. Their indifference was painted with a smile. And now that you've seen it, really seen it, you can choose to stop looking for connection where there is only performance. And that takes us into the next level. Because when the smile turns cold, what often follows is the silence of words that no longer try. Let's step into level 3, where the conversation itself begins to collapse. Level 3, their words shrink when their heart is absent. The collapse doesn't always begin with silence. Sometimes it starts with shortcuts in conversation, in attention, in the energy they bring into your presence. You speak and they nod. You share and they say, cool. You open up and they glance sideways, maybe at their phone, maybe at nothing at all. Words used to feel like bridges. Now they feel like closed doors. And that's how you begin to sense it. They're still talking to you, yes, but they're no longer with you. One of the easiest things in the world is to talk without truly engaging, to fill the air with noise while offering nothing of yourself. And this is exactly what begins to happen when someone no longer holds space for your presence. Their words become mechanical. Phrases like, same old, it's all good, we should catch up sometime. All of them sound fine, but they mean nothing. It's not what they say, it's what they don't give. No follow-up, no interest, no reflection, and over time that becomes its own kind of rejection. The Stoics were not overly concerned with how others behaved toward them, but they were deeply interested in clarity. Seneca taught us to stop pouring into what gives nothing back, to observe not just the noise of others, but the pattern beneath it. And one of the clearest patterns of someone who no longer values you is their consistent refusal to offer genuine words. They keep the conversation on the surface, always polite, never present, always near, never close. I once ran into someone I used to be close with. We hadn't spoken in a while. I smiled, genuinely curious, and asked how he'd been. He gave a one-word answer and looked toward the exit as he replied. Not cold, just disconnected. As if the moment between us didn't really exist for him. As if I were a memory walking by, not a person standing there. He ended the conversation with that all too familiar phrase, "We should catch up sometime." But we both knew he didn't mean it. These moments are small, but they accumulate. And if you're not paying attention, you might spend years mistaking minimal interaction for meaningful connection. You might keep trying, texting, calling, checking in, only to receive vague replies, delayed responses, or worse, nothing at all. And each time a piece of your self-respect erodes. Not because they rejected you loudly, but because they said so little that it made you question whether you ever mattered. Here's the painful truth. When someone's heart is no longer in the interaction, their words follow suit. They become brief, cautious, disengaged. Not because they're shy, not because they're busy, but because they have already left emotionally, they just haven't said it out loud. The Stoic doesn't beg for connection. He listens not only to what is said, but to how it's said, to what's missing, to what's fading. He doesn't overstay his welcome in someone's emotional world. And when he notices the absence of real presence, he doesn't take it personally. He takes it as information. Because not all distance is created by miles. Some is created by the slow death of meaningful words. Of course, not every short reply is a rejection. People have rough days. People get tired. Not every moment is a performance of warmth. But the Stoic doesn't judge by a single moment. He watches the rhythm over time. Is this person quiet with everyone or only with you? Are they warm in other conversations but reserved when it's just the two of you? If so, then you already have your answer. And the answer doesn't require confrontation. It requires adjustment. What's even more subtle than short replies is the disappearance of curiosity. They don't ask questions. They don't check in. They don't follow up on what you've shared. Because someone who cares, even a little, remembers the threads of your story. They want to know how something turned out. They want to understand where your heart is. But someone who no longer holds space for you doesn't ask, because they don't intend to stay long enough to listen. And so, the wise response is simple. Stop pouring energy into half-open doors. Stop trying to revive conversations that have already been left behind. Stop hoping that your words will suddenly start to mean something to someone who's no longer offering theirs. Not out of bitterness, out of respect. Because here's what the Stoic understands. Words are only meaningful when they come with presence. Without presence, they're just sound. And when someone consistently withholds that presence from you, you must stop offering yours like it costs nothing. You don't need to chase deeper connection. You need to recognize when it's no longer available. And then you move with grace. That's the quiet power of clarity. And from here, the silence deepens. Not just in words, but in tone, in energy, in the way a once simple conversation begins to sting. Because when words grow cold, the next level isn't what's said, it's how it's said. Let's move now into level 4, where even the tone becomes a weapon wrapped in politeness. So when their words grow thin and their voice stops reaching for you, the next distance is even quieter. It's not what they say, it's what they never touch. Let's step into level 4, where their body stops recognizing yours, even in the smallest gestures. Level 4, the distance that never closes. There's a kind of distance that doesn't show up on maps. You can sit beside someone just inches away and still feel like you're a world apart. This is the fourth level of silent rejection. Not through words, not even through silence, but through the absence of touch. Human beings are wired for contact. A pat on the back, a handshake, a simple touch on the shoulder. These are not just gestures. They're signals, quiet affirmations that say, I see you, I'm with you, you're welcome here. But when someone starts to withdraw even from that, when they stop reaching out physically in any way, you begin to feel it. You begin to feel unheld by the world around you. Not ignored, not attacked, just left out, invisibly excluded from the space that others are still allowed to enter. Of course, not everyone is physically expressive. Some people are naturally reserved. Some are raised to be cautious with physical affection. That's not rejection. That's temperament. The Stoic doesn't judge people for being quiet or private or slow to open, but he does pay attention to patterns. And he notices when the restraint isn't universal, it's selective. Because if someone hugs everyone in the room, but offers you only a nod, if they slap backs, tap shoulders, lean close to others, but keep their arms stiff by their sides when standing near you, that is not shyness, that is a choice. I remember being at a gathering, people laughing, catching up, moving from group to group and with that casual, warm familiarity. One guy, let's call him Eric, was the kind of person who lit up a room. Big gestures, loud greetings, easy hugs, high fives all around. But when he reached me, the shift was immediate. No contact, no hand on the shoulder, no playful shove, just a tight smile and a quick pivot to someone else. It happened again at the next event, and the one after that. No conflict, no tension, just omission. And I realized then, sometimes the wall isn't made of anger, it's made of absence. Physical presence carries meaning, and so does physical avoidance. It speaks without needing to explain itself. It tells you, I don't want to be this close. And when that message is consistent, it cannot be ignored. You may have felt this in other ways too. You reach out for a handshake, and they offer a wave instead. You sit beside them, and they shift slightly away. You lean in to speak, and they lean out, even just slightly. It's not dramatic. That's what makes it so hard to pinpoint. But something inside you still tightens. Because deep down, we all understand what it means when someone flinches from proximity. They're not protecting themselves. They're protecting space from you. And here's the painful distinction the Stoic must learn to make. There are people who don't like touch, and then there are people who don't want your touch. The former is about personal boundaries. The latter is about rejection. You can tell the difference not by how they act with you, but by how they act with everyone else. Are they warm to others, but cold with you? Do they high-five the group, but pull back when you join in? That's not a mistake. That's not personality. That's a message. But the Stoic doesn't push against that message. He doesn't chase after touch like a child needing approval. He simply observes what is withheld and adjusts his own offering accordingly. Because true self-respect isn't just about how you treat others. It's about how long you tolerate being treated as if you don't belong. And if someone is telling you through silence, through stillness, through stiff posture, that they do not want you near, then you honor that message not by demanding more, but by stepping back. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs?" Sometimes what comes to you is space, a space someone else has created, a boundary they don't explain, but enforce with every lack of contact. You don't need to resist it. You don't even need to understand it. You just need to notice. Because over time, you will see those who want you near will move toward you, even slightly. Their body will soften, lean, relax. They won't flinch from your presence. They'll find reasons to close the gap, not excuses to keep it wide. And for those who don't, you don't chase. You don't question. You don't beg to be let in. You honor the space they've drawn, and you walk elsewhere. This level of distance doesn't come with conflict. It doesn't need to. It just feels like you're always standing a little too far outside the circle. And the more you try to step closer, the more clearly you feel the resistance. That's your cue, not to get louder, not to try harder, but to let it be. Because the Stoic knows you don't need to touch everyone to be whole, but you also don't need to stay where you are consistently untouched. And as this physical barrier forms, another form of exclusion often follows, not just in gestures, but in social dynamics. Because what begins with avoiding your touch soon turns into avoiding your presence altogether. Let's move into level 5, where your name slowly disappears from the guest list. Level 5, you were never part of their plans. Sometimes exclusion doesn't sound like no. It sounds like nothing at all. There's no argument, no conflict, just plans made without you, events that happened, and you found out only after the photos went up. And that's what makes this level of rejection so quietly painful. Because it doesn't scream, it whispers, it doesn't slam the door. It simply never opens one for you. At first, you tell yourself it was probably a misunderstanding. Maybe they forgot. Maybe it was last minute. Maybe they thought you were busy. But then it happens again and again. And soon the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. You are never invited. You scroll through your feed and see familiar faces at the same table. Group chats buzzing with plans you weren't included in. Birthdays, dinners, game nights. Moments that once would have involved you now unfold without a trace of you in them. And here's what hurts even more. Sometimes the people who leave you out are the same ones you once prioritized, the ones you checked in on, supported, made space for. But somehow when they drew the circle of who matters, your name didn't make it inside. The Stoics teach us not to rely on the attention of others to feel grounded, but they also teach clarity. And clarity means seeing this for what it is, not an accident, not bad luck, but a message spoken through silence. You are not part of their plans, not because you did something wrong, but because your presence is no longer essential to their world. Think back. When was the last time someone invited you first? Not as an afterthought, not because someone else dropped out, but because they genuinely wanted your presence. And if that question takes too long to answer, you already know. We live in a culture obsessed with being busy, so when people exclude you, they rarely admit it. They'll say, things have just been crazy lately, or we should totally hang out soon. But soon never comes because it was never truly intended. These phrases aren't commitments. They're smoke, used to avoid the sting of saying what they really mean. You're no longer part of this. One of the hardest things to accept is this. You can care about someone deeply, but still not be included in the life they're choosing to live. It's not dramatic, it's not cruel, it's just clear. And that clarity is what the Stoic learns to embrace. Seneca wrote, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Improvement isn't just intellectual, it's emotional, it's spiritual. It's the peace that comes from being around people who choose you without needing a reminder. You don't need to be in everyone's calendar, but you deserve to be in someone's plans without having to ask. I remember once pausing my own efforts to initiate, to reach out, to check in, to plan, and in the stillness that followed, no one reached back. At first, it felt like silence, but slowly I realized it was information. Because the people who value you will notice your absence. They'll ask where you've been. They'll wonder why they haven't heard from you. But those who never noticed you to begin with won't notice you are gone. And that's how you know. This is not about expecting others to chase you. It's about recognizing when the connection was only ever one-sided. When you've been holding space in your life for someone who never planned to return the gesture. And once you see that, the path becomes simple. Not easy, but simple. You stop asking for a place where you were never considered. You stop knocking on doors that were never going to open. You shift your energy inward, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Because the Stoic doesn't just walk away from rejection. He walks toward clarity, toward people and places that reflect mutual care, not performative kindness. You don't need to be begged to stay, but you also don't need to beg to be included. So if you find yourself constantly watching others make memories without you, if you're always discovering events after they happen, always wondering why no one thought to include you, then stop wondering, start remembering. Remember who makes space for you, who invites you without being prompted, who thinks of you without needing a reason. Because real connection doesn't require reminders. And from this level of exclusion, where your presence disappears from their plans, the next shift can be even subtler and more unsettling. Because once they no longer want you around, some people no longer want you known. And so they begin to speak of you, not to you. Let's move into level 6, where silence becomes useful only when they need something, and your name reappears only when it serves them. Level 6, they only reach out when they need something. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels intentional. Not because someone is lost or busy or overwhelmed, but because they have made a decision, even if they never say it aloud. You're not part of their emotional life. You're a resource. You know the kind of message I'm talking about. It's been 3 weeks, no call, no check-in, and then suddenly your phone lights up. Hey, hope you're good. Quick favor. There's no curiosity about how you've been. No question about what's going on in your life. Just a request. It's not conversation. It's a transaction. And it leaves you sitting there, phone in hand, wondering, is this all I am to them now? The Stoics would say that we are not owed consistency from others, but we are responsible for recognizing its absence. Because over time, a very clear pattern begins to form. They don't ask about you. They don't share with you. They don't show up in your life when you need support. But when they need something, advice, help, a connection, a favor, you suddenly exist again. It's not affection, it's convenience. And maybe you've told yourself it's okay, that people are just busy, that life gets in the way. And yes, sometimes that's true, but busyness doesn't explain a pattern. And when the only time they remember you is when you can provide something, you're not part of their heart. You're part of their strategy. There's a subtle pain in being remembered only when you're useful. It makes you question the entire history of the relationship. Was any of it real? Did they ever care, or were you just helpful? The Stoic doesn't spiral into bitterness. He doesn't rewrite the past in anger, but he does observe the present, and he pays attention to what is repeated. I once had someone in my life who used to be close. We'd talk, share, check in regularly, but slowly the calls stopped coming. The replies grew shorter, until one day weeks had gone by in silence. And then suddenly, hey, do you still have access to that thing we talked about last year? I could really use it. No, how are you? No reference to the gap in time. Just a direct line to a request. And that moment said everything I needed to know. Not about them, but about where I stood. You don't exist in their quiet moments. You exist in their needs. You are not who they think about. You are who they remember to use. And the worst part? They're probably not even aware they're doing it. Because when someone is emotionally distant, they stop seeing your humanity. They only see function. So how does the Stoic respond? Not with rage, not with confrontation, but with calm recognition. Because the moment you realize someone only reaches out when they need something, you're not confused anymore. You're clear, and clarity is power. This level of rejection isn't loud. It's not about being pushed away. It's about being reduced to what you can offer, what you can do, what you provide. Your value is not based on who you are, but what you give. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear and like immortals in all that you desire." Desiring connection from those who clearly don't reciprocate is to act as if we have infinite time and energy. The Stoic knows better. He knows the cost of investing in people who only appear when they want something. And he chooses instead to reclaim that energy, not out of pride, but out of peace. So how do you spot this level of quiet dismissal? It's simple. Ask yourself, who checks in on you without needing something? Who remembers your story without you reminding them? Who notices when you fall silent and reaches out anyway? And then ask this, if you stopped being useful to them, would they still call? If you stopped giving, would they still care? The answers might hurt, but they will also free you, because being wanted only when you're useful is not connection, it's utilization. And when you begin to see that difference, you stop offering parts of yourself that were never seen as gifts, only as tools. You begin to offer your time more selectively. You begin to show up where you are invited in spirit, not just in favor. You begin to choose mutuality, and from here, the dynamic shifts even further. Because sometimes when people no longer see you as emotionally valuable, they don't just reduce you to a tool, they reduce you to a topic. One they discuss when you're not in the room. Let's move now into level 7, where the silence ends, but only behind your back. Level 7, they promise like they mean it, but never follow through. Some betrayals don't come wrapped in harsh words or loud arguments. They come dressed in sincerity, spoken gently, even earnestly, but never kept. This is the level of repeated disappointment, where someone tells you again and again, "I'll be there, I promise, count on me." And every time you want to believe them, because their voice sounds genuine, their tone feels familiar. And part of you still wants to trust the version of them that existed once, or maybe never truly did. But time reveals patterns, and patterns tell the truth that words often hide. They say yes, but don't show up. They agree, but forget. They promise and then vanish behind circumstances. At first, you make excuses for them. Life happens. Things come up. You give them grace, space, benefit of the doubt. But the Stoic knows, when something happens once, it's chance. When it becomes a rhythm, it's a message. And the message here is clear. Their word is not tied to their action. This kind of person doesn't reject you outright. They keep you in a cycle of almost. Almost showed up, almost followed through, almost cared. But almost is not loyalty, and almost doesn't build anything real. You begin to notice how they're always on the verge of commitment, but never quite cross the line into actual reliability. You invite them, and they say, "Yes, definitely, can't wait." But when the time comes, there's silence. Then a late apology, then a reason, then nothing changes. And the reasons always sound reasonable. Work ran late. I forgot to set a reminder. Family stuff came up. And maybe all of those are true once, maybe even twice. But the Stoic does not base his life on wishful thinking. He watches what repeats. Because people who value you will try. They'll follow through. Not perfectly, but sincerely. Effort is not perfection, but absence over and over is not effort. It's avoidance. And the deeper truth is this: a person who treats their own promises casually will never protect the ones you give them. Because if someone cannot honor their word, they will never respect yours. They may not mean to hurt you. They may not even notice what they're doing, but your feelings, your time, your trust are all being gambled every time they speak without intention. The Stoic doesn't need to argue with this kind of person. He doesn't demand accountability. He doesn't beg for better. He simply observes and adjusts. I remember trusting someone to be there for an important event. Nothing extravagant, just meaningful to me. They said they'd come, said it clearly, with warmth, without hesitation. But they didn't, and not for the first time. No call, no message, just absence. And later, "Sorry, I totally forgot. You know how crazy things are." And that was the moment I stopped hoping. Not out of spite, but because I finally saw that hope was not the issue. Pattern was. It's tempting to think your expectations were too high, but the Stoic doesn't ask for perfection. He asks for alignment between words and actions. And when someone continually says what sounds right, but never does what is right, he doesn't label them cruel. He simply calls them unreliable. And unreliability is not compatible with inner peace. You cannot build trust on the back of constant explanations. You cannot create closeness with people who disappear when they are needed most. And most importantly, you cannot continue offering your time, your heart, your loyalty to someone who handles it like a loose coin. So the Stoic chooses something better. Not louder, not angrier, just clearer. He pulls back, not to punish, but to protect. Because when you've been promised something over and over and the result never changes, it's not unfair to stop believing. It's why Seneca said, "Nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart." But I would add, few things are more revealing than a consistent one. Because consistency shows character, not in grand gestures, but in small follow-throughs. So ask yourself, who makes promises with ease, but forgets them with the same ease? Who disappears in the moments that matter, but always returns when it's convenient? Who speaks of commitment, but never builds anything solid? And then ask yourself the harder question. Why are you still trusting someone who has shown you they can't carry that trust? You don't need a final betrayal to walk away. You just need to recognize the small ones that keep stacking quietly. Because sometimes the loudest form of rejection is not no, it's yes, followed by nothing. And once you see that, you stop listening to their voice and start listening to their pattern. And as we move forward, the final form of erasure is the most subtle of all. Not in their absence, not in their silence, but in their ability to stand beside you and still never hear you. Let's step into level 8, where your words are spoken clearly, but never seem to land. Level 8, they hear you but never really listen. There's a silence more painful than being ignored. It's the silence that happens right in the middle of your sentence. You speak, you explain, you share something vulnerable, something real, and instead of leaning in, they glance at their phone. Instead of responding, they change the subject. Instead of truly hearing you, they just wait for you to finish. They're not absent. They're present in body, but absent in soul. And somehow that's worse. At least when someone doesn't show up, you know where you stand. But when someone stands beside you and treats your voice like background noise, you begin to question your own relevance. Am I being too sensitive? Maybe I talk too much. Maybe this isn't that important. No, you're not imagining it. You're just no longer being received. The Stoics valued few things more than dialogue, not just as conversation, but as communion. To speak and be heard is a fundamental human experience. It affirms your existence. It signals connection. But when someone stops listening, truly listening, you start to feel invisible. Not because your words have no sound, but because to them, your words have no weight. You may have felt this before. You say something personal. They nod, then respond with a completely unrelated thought. You express a concern. They dismiss it with, "You're overthinking." You try to discuss something important. They shift, scroll, check their watch, answer without looking at you, and slowly it becomes clear. They're not listening to understand. They're listening to move on. And that is the final form of silent rejection. Not through what they do, not through what they say, but through what they consistently refuse to engage with, your voice. The Stoic does not demand to be heard. He does not beg for attention. But he does notice. He notices when his words fall flat again and again, when every attempt at depth is met with avoidance, when truth becomes an echo, bouncing back without meaning. And in that noticing, he finds freedom, because clarity always precedes peace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In the same way, waste no more time trying to be heard by someone who has already decided your voice carries no meaning. Be who you are. Speak your truth. But speak it where it's honored. There's dignity in your voice. There's weight in your words. But only if you give them to people who are capable of holding them. If someone consistently changes the subject when you speak, if they offer no reflection, no curiosity, no response that shows they're truly present, then it's time to accept what they've been saying all along without saying it. You don't matter here. And that's a truth worth hearing, not to be wounded by it, but to be released by it, because you do not need to shout to be heard. You do not need to over-explain, overshare, or overstay. You need only to recognize the point at which your presence becomes performance and your truth becomes tolerated noise. And then you stand up and you walk away. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because your voice deserves space to echo back with meaning. I once sat across from someone who used to be a close friend. I brought up something honest, something that had been weighing on me. They nodded, changed the subject, talked about themselves for the rest of the conversation. That was the last time I mistook proximity for connection, because someone can be right in front of you and still not see you at all. And here's what the Stoic understands better than most. When someone stops listening, You don't raise your voice. You raise your standards. You don't keep speaking into a void. You don't keep repeating yourself in hopes of finally being acknowledged. You don't explain your worth to people who've already decided to overlook it. You simply stop giving them what they've stopped respecting. And in that stillness, you find something greater than approval. Peace. So here's the final lesson of this 8th and deepest level. When someone no longer listens, you don't need to shout. You just need to stand up and walk away. Because walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the quiet recognition that your energy, your voice, and your presence were never meant to be reduced to background noise. And now that you've walked through all 8 levels of silent rejection, you begin to see with clearer eyes, not to judge others harshly, but to choose more wisely where you pour your time, your effort, your heart. Not everyone who stands beside you is standing with you. And now that you see the difference, you don't need to demand inclusion. You simply stop offering yourself to spaces that were never prepared to hold you. When what's left unspoken becomes the clearest answer. Not every rejection comes with harsh words. Sometimes it arrives in the form of politeness, a smile, a nod, an unanswered message, a forgotten plan. And as you've seen through these 8 levels, they don't have to say, "I don't like you," because they already have. They've said it with their body, their tone, their absence. They've said it through silence, hesitation, and forgotten invitations. They've said it through everything else. The Stoic does not chase clarity through confrontation. He doesn't demand explanations. He observes, he accepts, and then he chooses peace over performance. You don't need to be accepted everywhere. You don't need to be chosen by everyone. But you do deserve to be seen, to be welcomed in places that don't just tolerate your presence, but value it. That kind of space exists, and you'll find it more easily once you stop pouring yourself into places that echo with quiet rejection. Because the moment you stop needing their approval is the moment you begin returning home to yourself. Let this be your quiet turning point. If even one of these levels resonated with you, if you've ever sat in a room and felt invisible, or heard your voice go unanswered, you are not imagining it, you are waking up to it. And if this reflection gave words to something you've long felt but couldn't name, consider sharing it in the comments below. Just 2 or 3 words that capture your truth. It might be finally clear, or seen at last, or even just I understand now. Whatever you write, someone else may read it and realize they're not alone either. This is true Stoic way, a space for clarity, for stillness, and for quiet strength. If you found something meaningful here, you are welcome to stay. Not because you need this space, but because this space may need you, exactly as you are. Thank you for walking this path with me. And may your next steps be taken not in search of belonging, but in alignment with your worth.